Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our junior high orientation session. I really want to say thank you so much for taking time to join us today. Thank you to the grade sixes who are joining from the classroom. My name is Brian Tahart. I'm the vice principal here, and this is Mrs. McAllister, our principal and leader extraordinaire. And yeah, just thank you for taking this time. Just to be aware, we're going to do question and answer via text or chat at the end. So just hold your questions for now. If you want, you can just pre-type them into the chat box. But if you could wait to send them till the end, that would be fantastic. Now, you may be wondering, why is there an elephant in the room? At least in this little room here. We don't have one here, fortunately. But I wanted to talk about the big elephant in the room today, and that would be COVID-19. And that is something that has drastically changed how we are doing junior high. And the reason I wanted to kind of be upfront is what we're going to discuss today will be what normal junior high life is like. I mean, with that being said, online learning here in the junior high has gone fantastic. We have a lot of exciting things happening, and I feel like we can say we've done a pretty good job of adjusting to this new temporary abnormal. But what we're going to share with you today is really kind of on with what is regular life like at Masters College, what can you expect out of a normal junior high experience, and these pretty much line up with what COVID life is. But again, just so you have that in mind, that we understand that is a huge thing that's out there right now, and we'll deal with that kind of more because by the time we get to next fall, things will probably be drastically different again. All right, I'm going to begin by putting it over to Mrs. McAllister, and she's going to share a little bit about the end goal of where we're working towards.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome. As Brian mentioned, I'm Susan McAllister. I'm principal of the college. If you are having any tech difficulties throughout this meeting, just a reminder that we will record it, and be sure to have the link available if you want to rewatch, or for grade 6 students and parents if you want to just review it together. We'll just keep working through our mic quality because I know some of you might be hearing a little bit of rattling from Mr. Tahart's mic. We're hoping that mine is a little more stable. And so while I'm introducing a couple of things, our tech will keep working with Mr. Tahart's microphone. For those of you who joined late, we're asking if you would please put your questions in the chat, and we'll go over a bit of information, and then at the end we'll come back and address questions. So as you can see on the slide is our graduate profile for students of Masters College. So when students enter with us in grade 7, we're heading with an end in mind. So there is always for us an intentionality to the decisions that we make in terms of programming, scheduling, options, sports, etc., etc. And you can see here that our goal is to have students be able to leave us with a mind of pursuing their own personal vision for their lives. So that looks, of course, different for everyone. And our job is to give them the skill sets, to walk them through the experiences that help them refine their choices. So as they begin their post-secondary journey, whether that's college or university, that they have a sense of where they're going with their next steps after high school. We certainly see universities getting more and more competitive, and I'm sure you've heard this as well. And so there's two elements to students really having their portfolio ready for university. One is to get the top grades that they can in university prep courses. And so as students move through our junior high, at the end of grade 9, we want them to be ready to take those university prep courses in senior high. And certainly that is where our senior high programming has landed. And then the second part is just having good connections to adults in their lives who speak well of them, who help them develop those skills outside of the academics. They become their references, the ones who can speak to their portfolio of extra activities. I would just say as well that we want to make sure there's a high diversity of programming and a high diversity of experience for students, because as you can imagine, really when you leave grade 6, you haven't had a lot of choice in programming, and that's part of the exciting part of junior high that Mr. Tahart will speak to, which is how they get to now start making programming choices with, of course, parent support and parent authorization.
Now, the big thing I want to begin by talking about today is that it's important to remember that there's a lot of changes that happen in junior high. And for those of you who are watching, parents, some of you may remember fondly your junior high time, others may remember it as a bit of a bizarre time, but part of the stigma of junior high is all of the change that's going to happen. But here, one of the things that we really hold near and dear to our hearts is change is good. And there's a natural process that teenagers go through in these junior high years, and it's a bit of a wild roller coaster at times. Yes, grade 6s watching in your class, things are going to change. And we don't need to necessarily talk about all the fun stuff that changes, but it's a really exciting time in their lives. But as parents especially, it's important to be prepared for these changes to happen. And one of the big places we see these changes happening is in relationships. And so a lot of times in those early junior high years, we see kind of a changing of the landscape of friendships. And it's something that's just important to kind of say ahead of time and be prepared for that. You know, kids who are friends one day may not necessarily be friends the next day, and then shockingly enough, a week later, they may be good friends again. And that's all kind of part of that neat junior high experience and part of what we work together. And, you know, as parents, our recommendation to you is, as you're kind of embarking on this journey, is just to be prepared, to understand that these are normal and they're actually good changes as you go through them. You know, that little bit of defiance that comes out, it's actually a natural kind of pre-programmed thing happening, and we try to celebrate that and provide opportunities. Our school kind of theme last year was Join the Rebellion. And the idea is that this need to kind of push boundaries is a good thing. But it's how we foster it and how we kind of encourage kids to go through this that really will help kind of define that experience. Now, with that change will be an increase of school expectations. So as we go into junior high, it's important to understand that there's going to be a large increase in academic rigor. And this will look different for different students. Some may not feel a huge change as they go into grade 7s, into grade 7 life, but a lot of students notice that the expectations of them change. And this is just a natural kind of transition. In grade 6, they do an incredible job of teaching that core content and bringing it to life in different experiences. As we move into junior high, there's a change in the way students are attacking concepts. And this can lead to a feeling of unpreparedness at times in terms of what the concepts are, what's being taught. But it's all kind of, it's a good experience. And as students start walking through it, they'll notice and adapt to these changes of the junior high experience. So if you feel after the first month of junior high, your student or your child is struggling, it's okay. You know, there are different expectations, different kind of processes, and you know, that's all, again, part of that changing experience. And even just the different teachers, different school experience just lead all to just a little bit of a feeling of uncertainty. I mean, in grade 6, you're the top dogs. You know, the whole elementary is looking up to you. And it's a bit of a change coming into grade 7. And that just those feelings of, you know, this is different and all those kind of things are something we want to celebrate, but also know that we're aware of. Now, Mrs. McAllister, would you like to talk a little bit about student life?
Sure. So I mentioned that we really focus on the academic preparedness of our students, and Mr. DeHart also expanded on that because we do want students to begin high school ready to operate at the highest academic level possible, but it also matters to us the student experience, the other balancing factors. And so we have things like lunchtime activities because we know we have very busy students. We also know lots of you carpool. And so maybe after school activities are a little bit difficult. So things we do at lunch include things like yearbook, leadership, student council, robotics club. We keep our gym open at lunch for students. Some of them just need more movement at lunchtime, and we understand that. We also allow our students in junior high to begin to experience the right to go off campus at lunch with parent permission. So that is that little bit of increased freedom along with increased responsibility that we want students to begin to engage in as a parent you feel that they're ready to do that. In the fall, we have camp. So camp is an overnight experience for 7, 8, 9. It involves lots of fun activities. It's how you get to know each other and your teachers on a whole other level. And it just tends to be a lot of fun, and the heartbeat of it really is relationship building. So we always look forward to fall camp. I mentioned how some of our clubs happen at lunch, but there's also other clubs. So we have had students begin things like a newspaper club Or they could actually say, hey, we would want to have a chess club at lunch, or we want to watch French foreign language movies at lunch has been a club. So we also invite students to suggest to us a club that maybe they would like to start with teacher help that we haven't already thought to offer. But every year we do have those clubs available. Some of them happen after school, so things like robotics, if you're deeply involved in robotics, which is a great experience, often there needs to be some after school time committed to that. Competitive sports begins in junior high, and so we run all the typical sports that you would find in junior, senior high. So in the fall, we start with golf, and then if you are of age, you can actually join in the football team, which we have a shared team with either Springbank or Rundle, just for numbers, because it takes a lot of bodies to have a good football team. So that's available when students are old enough. Then we move into volleyball, basketball, badminton, soccer, and then we also have kind of beginning and end, the track and field and cross country running. So fall and spring is the balance for track and field. And then in junior high specifically, they have the option to play floor hockey as a team, and then there's a small tournament organized around that. So sports teams are meant to be competitive. They're meant for students who really want to try the sport at a different level. They will get to try all of those sports through phys ed class, and then we schedule extra practice time through our option programming. So we're trying to give as many students a chance to try team sports as possible without a large extra commitment outside of school time for yourselves as a family. And then, of course, I'll just mention that we do offer trips. So remember, we're talking about the regular school year, not the COVID school year. So trips in grade 7 are within Alberta. We try to do one that is at least 1 or 2 nights overnight away, again, as a maturing experience. In grade 8, they do the Quebec and Ottawa trip. And then in grade 9, we typically have offered the SALT sailing trip, which again, is really a chance for students to bond together. You get on that tall ship, there's nowhere else to go, and they actually learn how to work the tall ship, which is exciting.
Thank you. Now, one other kind of change that happens in junior high is we move away from the traditional homeroom teacher model. And this is something that's kind of an important thing to have in mind as you go into it. And so instead of having one specific teacher who's kind of the core operator for everything happening in that student's life, we go to more of a split approach. And we try to go away from calling it homeroom teachers, and it's more of their core content teachers. So every student will have assigned a core math science teacher. And so any questions you have about related to those topics or anything in that, you'll ask that teacher. And then they'll also have a core humanities teacher. And then this teacher will be responsible for setting the direction for your language arts and your social studies courses. And then from there, students will have 2 other groupings they'll be involved in. One will be their language grouping, and every student will have a choice of either taking Spanish or French through their junior high experience. The level of rigorness varies depending on where you're at. So some people will be coming from being native speakers in the language and very advanced to those who just want to try it for the first time. Especially in our Spanish class, many of the students are trying it for the first time, and it's a really fun experience. And these kids will also have health and phys ed together. And then our third set of grouping will be the options groupings. And we'll take a look at the specific options in a moment. But so they have the chance to kind of be with many kids. And so one of the often fears we have as parents, and I say this myself as a parent of 3 kids, is will my son or daughter get to see their friends in the day? And the answer to that is yes, because they're going to have many groupings. So even if they're not in the same core class, they're going to have these other groups together and this chance to see other kids and to kind of move around throughout the day. So that takes us into the option courses. Now this is an overview, and one of the exciting things about options is they're always changing. There's one that I didn't add on here that we just started recently, and that's a sign language option. And so Mrs. Calvert, one of our high school teachers, has started teaching students just the basics of sign language. And I'm even learning a bit because I didn't know any sign language going into this. And it's just kind of a neat experience. So we have our arts and our photography option, and within those there's a variety of different kind of sub-options that students will be able to take. There's our sports options, which will go into more detail in a little bit, computer design, coding, and there's a whole variety under that umbrella of different coding options. We do some web design, we do a little bit of basic HTML, JavaScript, and we're even looking at adding some Python into grade 9. Robotics is one of our really exciting club and options, and learning the basics, and we use VEX Robotics for that. Film study and film kind of design and learning the basics of that. Leadership and service options. We have debate, which also is one of our competitive clubs we have on campus. There's a music option, which is one of the most popular options we offer. And our music program is very non-traditional. So we don't have your classic band class, but instead students are in kind of a varied experience where they learn theory and some basic music appreciation together, but they can select their own instrument, vocals, or technology routes through the music program. And they can go from a basic entry-level student all the way up into high-level professional students. We have foods, which we offer on varying levels at different times, woodworking, and drama. Now again, it's important to say other things kind of creep in at different times, like I didn't add outdoor ed, which is one of our seasonal options, and there's just a large variety within that. Which leads us into sports teams and sports options. So you can see we have our 3 primary sports things, which would be volleyball, basketball, and soccer. And those are offered as options. So if you're on the team, you'll actually use your practice time during class as an option, practice as a team, and then only the game times will be outside of school time. Because we know students, you're busy, parents, you're even busier, and we wanted to try and create some space so kids who have busy schedules outside of school can still compete and be part of that school experience. And then we have our other sports, which Mrs. McAllister did an excellent job kind of going through, where these practices will happen outside of school time. And just a unique experience to kind of develop a new school. Handball is one we do at varying times. We held the provincial championships here a few years ago, and so it just depends on interest, and floor hockey's the same. So then we look at clubs, and we have a whole variety of different clubs. And again, this is one that changes from year to year because we want to be flexible to the needs of students. And I'll give you an example. A few years ago, we had a teacher who loved international food. I think he just wanted to eat different food. And so he started an international food club and got some of the moms to send in some dishes from their home countries. And kids just had a lovely buffet together once a month, just eating these amazing foods. And I would just show up and eat. It was lovely. But we have, you can see, and we talked about all these. Some of the ones that stand out, though, is Alpha. This is a great experience for students, just learn some basic biblical principles, hang out at lunch, and we have a group that comes in to help kind of run this of some really awesome volunteers from the community. There's mentorship where students from the junior high and high school can mentor kids within the elementary. We have our leadership club, which kind of sets a good direction for where we're going in the school, gets to organize community events. They organize dances, spirit days, and some neat stuff like that. And then one of the big highlights of every year is our drama production. And it varies from year to year what it looks like. Some years we'll run a junior high drama production, and then we'll run a high school production. And in other years we'll run a grade 7 to grade 12 experience. And this, is something that warms my heart because the older students get to kind of act in a mentorship role to the younger kids. And it's not just acting. We often will have a crew upwards of 60 and 70 people with only 20 people on stage. And the rest are doing amazing things like running the tech, organizing costumes, props, stage direction. There's so many different elements that make up the production. And, as a teacher, this gives me a heart attack because on the night of the show, the teachers are not allowed to do anything. We have to sit in the front row and watch as the students run the entire experience. But what's great about it, and this kind of goes back to that preparing you for life beyond high school, and it gives you really good leadership experience. It gives you an amazing feeling of accomplishment. And as adults, we know this. It looks really good on a resume to have served in those leadership experiences.
I'd just like to jump in and just mention the model of the drama production that Mr. Tahart was just explaining is really a model throughout our clubs. So if you join debate as a 7th grader, by the time you're a 10th or 11th grader, you are now training the younger students in debate. If you join yearbook in grade 7, you're kind of the idea is you stick with it and you become editor, perhaps in high school, which is actually a scholarship position on the yearbook crew. Similarly, if you took a look at music, we have students who run all of the tech for our music program. They run the tech for all of our chapels and assemblies. They learn that from other students, and that has really been our 20-year history. So when we talk about ownership, growing up, taking responsibility and learning, it also flows into the things like the clubs. And the other thing I'd like to mention is, if you want to play basketball and you want to join the drama production, that's fine. So we don't have that idea where you must pick and choose, and I'm only permitted to join one club to make space for somebody else. So one of the huge benefits of being in a smaller school is you can be involved in many things. You don't have to just pick one. And I find most students actually have a wide diversity of interests. They are both in the fine arts and in sports, and perhaps they want to do something like organize a debate tournament. And we just allow them to have their hand in many, many things.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. And you know, one kind of neat example of this would be our regenerative design program. I think Mrs. McAllister and I can both say we don't know much about regenerative design, but we had a group of students that were really passionate about this idea of sustainable growth, sustainable growing, and they worked with us to create a hydroponic and aquaponic kind of growing apparatus within the school. And so we still have it today. It's, I think, 4th year being kind of in effect now at the school, of these students who are growing vegetables and different things within the school and creating initiatives, presenting at conferences. And again, it's just that really good experience. We had some students very passionate about something, and we just made it work. And it's one of those kind of fun experiences. Robotics started like that. Our debate program kind of started from nothing, and within 4 years we become one of the top competing schools within the city, just because we had this passion amongst our students. So with all of that, we've talked a lot at you guys. I think it's a good time for us now to kind of begin looking at questions. Now, before we fully launch into that, I really want to thank you for your time. And I know for some of you, you have a lot of busy stuff to move on to, so we will not take it offensively at all if you sign off whenever you would like in the next little bit. But if you want to stay around and hear kind of this question and answer, participate in it, we just warmly encourage you to do that. And our process for questions today really simply will be, you text them in the chat on the side, and Mrs. McAllister is ready. She's going to facilitate the questions, and then we'll do our best to answer them as you kind of fire away at us. So feel free to begin putting your questions in the chat section, and then when we feel we've kind of run our course on questions, we will move on and let you kind of continue on with your days.
So the first question is just about class size. So in junior high, we have just designated 3 sections, so similar to what you find in grade 4, 5, 6. So there are 3 sections, and within those we have 22 to 23 students per section. But sometimes classes are smaller. So when you split into options, you might be in an option class with just 15 students. Or in a foreign language class, perhaps you're more in the neighborhood of 17 or 18 students. But we really do hold our class sizes to that 22-23 map. So we are not one of the schools that is putting 35 or 40 students into a junior high classroom.
Great question.
Then the next question is about how many classes students take each semester. So really there are different ways classes are scheduled. So year-long classes are all of your big core subjects. So math, science, English, and social run all year, as do phys ed, your gym class, your health class, and your design thinking class. After that, we look at, okay, are you in French or Spanish? Again, that runs all year. But your options actually run 9 weeks at a time. So we call that a quarter, and then there's 4 quarters in a school year. So in the first 9 weeks of school, you would have 2 different options happening. At the end of 9 weeks, you would start 2 different options, and so on for each of the 4 quarters. The only exception to that really is music, because many students stick with music for 2 quarters or for 1 semester by the semester count.
And one thing I'll add to that is kind of later in the year, for those of you who, which hopefully is all of you choose to kind of come with us for junior high, we're going to host another information session where we go into like the what time does school start, how do I select options, and all those kind of like nitty gritty details. So look, don't concern yourself too much, and we have no problem answering those questions, but we'll get into those kind of like fine details. How long is lunch? These are the questions that we really want to know. And so we'll get to that, and we'll usually do that in around May, just to help you kind of prepare, because I know you get to that point where they're like, I need to know planning carpools and what's the schedule and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, thank you. Any more questions?
Yeah, there's one more for you,
Yeah.
which is about the tech requirements.
Oh, great question, and this is something I was hoping you'd ask. And our requirement for tech is we ask that you come with an Apple laptop. And the reason we ask for that is because our systems here at Masters are designed to support the Apple laptop kind of software system. And so they work best. So we have some students that try using PC devices on our network, and they can't connect with our printers, and they can't use the software that we have for free. And so we ask that you come with probably within the last 3 to 4 years, Apple device. But one of the really nice things that we've noticed about Apple laptops is they last for a long time. So if you are to get a new laptop for grade 7 next year, if you take good care of it, it will last all the way through your high school experience. My wife is currently on her 8th year with her own MacBook Air, and the quality with them is fantastic. Whereas we've seen with the Chromebooks, the life cycle can be quite a bit shorter. So that is the requirement, and there's no specifications. Any Apple laptop will work, especially if it's in the last couple of years. And there is an educational discount. We do have a master site, but it doesn't really do you much good. You can just go to any Apple store and say, my kid is in school. They'll ask the school, and you'll get the same discount you would for any student.
All right, so I know there were some grade 5 families who joined us today, and thank you for joining early, because I think it's great that you're already interested in this information. As a master's family, your enrollment between grade 6 and 7 is considered to be a rolling acceptance, which means that in the typical January timeframe where you confirm your re-registration between grade 5 and grade 6, you also confirm your re-registration between grade 6 and grade 7. For families who choose not to continue with us in junior high, creates those 2 to 3 or 4 spots where we will then look at new applications. And I would say each year we have about 4 new students into grade 7, which we love, because we know there's a high demand for good junior high programming. So if families weren't able to gain a position with us in our academy, we hope to be able to give a few of those families a spot starting in grade 7. And I just would like to answer the question about after-school care. So this is a great question. For students beginning in grade 7, they may enter the building as early as 7:15 in the morning, because at that age, they are actually responsible enough to look after themselves. So when they arrive in our building, they go to their designated spot, and then there's staff around supervising early in the morning, but there's not formal programming. Similarly, after school, we have after-school supervision from 3:30 until 4:45. So if you're a family who needs to drop a student early, or you need to have a little bit of a delay to pick a student up, we're very comfortable with that. Again, we're not programming, we're providing supervision for them. And they might be in after-school supervision, but they want to watch the volleyball game going on in the gym, and we love that because it contributes to school spirit. So we really try to keep our hours flexible for 7 to 12. And again, yes, some clubs do happen after school. Sometimes there's added practices. If there's a big debate tournament on the horizon, those students may be staying after school anyway in a club.
Yeah, and some parents just like to pick up late to avoid the parking lots, because it can be kind of crazy. So I know we have a group of parents that usually show up right around 3:45 when everything is nice and clear. So
Definitely.
Even if you're one of those people, I don't blame you, because it's crazy in the parking lot at those times.
So we don't have any other new questions in the chat. So we'll give you a couple minutes to fill in, but I'll just remind everybody that we will make this link available for viewing after. And then you can always go on the Masters website and contact either Mr. DeHart or myself if you have specific questions you would like to ask that maybe you don't want to ask in an open forum like this. We're always happy to book a meeting with you if you just need to ask some personal questions as a family. And that's something we do every year. So don't be scared to ask us that. And again, the finer details of grade 7 is really a spring conversation, as Mr. DeHart mentioned. So we won't leave you wondering about options and start times and lunch times and all those things. But we just know that if we tell you that now, we'll have to tell you again in the spring anyway. So we
Yeah.
will make sure we book that time with you in the spring.
Yeah, and those details are really important. I was in the parking lot the other day, and I actually was asked a really good question by an elementary parent, and maybe they're on right now, and I apologize because I didn't actually remember your name. But they asked me, what makes Masters Junior High unique? Because right now there are so many different junior high programs out there, and every school kind of has their own unique things. And I think the one thing at the core and the driving, I think the most important piece about our junior high is just the relational level and the kind of relationship students get to form with teachers. And I, as a parent, love the idea that the teachers get to know the kids here really well. Mrs. McAllister and myself also, we know the names of all the kids. If they're having an off day, we know them well enough to be able to tell. And so there's a level of accountability and friendship between the students and the teachers that I think is a really kind of nice thing. And I think that's one of the most unique things. And then also we have our design program, which we'll go into more details kind of in the spring, but through the 7 to 12 experience, the students every year are required to take a design thinking program. And in junior high, they're learning just the fundamentals of design thinking, and they become leaders in the design thinking kind of realm. And then in university, in high school, they begin designing their high school and university experience. And so they become intentional thinkers about their future. And we often talk about, and this is core to who we are at Masters, our future shouldn't be by accident. We shouldn't be reacting to the world. We should be designers of our future. We should be actively kind of setting ourselves on a path to success. And I was recently working, this was last year, with a young lady, and her goal in life was to become a surgeon. And we were talking through, what do you need to become a surgeon? And she's like, yeah, this is my goal, this is what I want. And she started researching the topic and came to the realization quickly, surgery is going the way of robotics. And she started understanding quickly the importance of robotics to be successful as a future surgeon. It may not be right now, it's just beginning, but she had this idea, and then she's a part of a robotics club, and it's just that understanding of what can I do now to start preparing myself for this future, because that's an important piece. And to have that, I want to be actively pursuing this now. I want to start taking positive steps toward this and not just kind of stumble through it as I have to learn.
Excellent.
Any more?
No, that is, I think, good for this morning. Just as I said that, I saw there was just one more question about the after school. We're very flexible with the after school because we have such responsible students, and we always have staff in the building later. What happens is the formal supervision ends at 4:45, and then your child's asked to wait in a designated area where the other adults then who are in the building are aware where they are and can just be supervising them just lightly to make sure that they're safe.
Yeah. And I mean, a lot of the students just, get caught up on homework. Some of them may watch a little bit of YouTube or something like that. It's just a time to kind of calm down after the day. And we have a teacher who's often just popping in and out, checking in on them. All right. Well, I really want to say thank you so much for joining us. As we know, we're all really busy right now, and I think it's kind of nice that on a snowy day we had something to keep us inside. And grade sixes, one thing I do want to say to you guys is I'm going to be setting up a time with your teacher soon where you can ask your own questions of things that you may want to know, and we'll work on that hopefully either next week or early into the new year. So thank you. We just hope you have a wonderful day, and since we probably won't see you, have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and hopefully we'll see all of your faces come January.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, goodbye.